So anyway, there I am, cooking up a fresh set of beans, getting ready to toss them in with my eggs, and suddenly I hear, "You can't have a bean omelet," and I'm like, hold on, I'll call you back. It's the Motley Broadcast! Hey guys, so today I'm coming back at you with another Let's Talk here. And I want to talk about something that I just recently changed my mind about, and that I'm hoping I can help to change yours about. Google Stadia. Now, some of you already know what Google Stadia is, but I'm going to go ahead and explain it anyway, just because I want everyone to be on the same page. So, Google Stadia is a new cloud-based game streaming service. It's kind of a mouthful, but I'll break it down. So essentially, Google has decided that they want to offer an alternative to console gaming, and also PC gaming if you really think about it. The way games work nowadays is you either buy a physical copy, or you buy a digital copy, and then you bring it home, or you sit at home and let it download, and you play the game on like an Xbox, or a PlayStation, or a PC, or even a Nintendo Switch. And all of those offer the option for digital or hard copy games, although for PC, you don't really see hard copy games anymore. But regardless of that fact, you still work these games in the same way that's been worked for since the 90s or even before that. But not with Google Stadia. So Stadia proposes a world in which we don't have to give up all our hard drive space to games. No downloads, no updating, no patch logs, none of that. And so you're probably thinking, well, how does that work? That's witchcraft, my dude. Games take up space. Yes, they do. Just not on your computer. Google owns server farms all over the world. And if you don't know what a server farm is, Google it. That's a thing for another time. But essentially, that means that they have control of broadband networks that allow them to have unfettered streaming access into your home. So, anywhere that you have internet, on any device that'll run Chrome browser, you can play all your Google Stadia games. You'll purchase them online through the Stadia store, like, for example, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is the game they've been running at their demos. And once you've purchased that, you can play on a Chromecast plugged into a TV, and then let's say you're about to leave the house, so you grab your smartphone here, this bad boy, you open it up, you launch your Chrome browser or whatever app they release for it, maybe you've got a little Bluetooth controller to go with it, and out the door you go, picking up Assassin's Creed right where you left off. Now, the game storage is all on that server somewhere off in their server farm. Meaning that they do all the updates, they do all the patches, they do all those long, horrendous downloads that we're used to doing. They take care of all that for you, so all you have to do is boot up the game and play. It also means you don't have to have the graphics to run that, because again, it's running on that server. They handle your graphics card requirements and your core requirements, whatever it is you need to play that game. So, thinking about it, you should be able to play it on in a Kindle or something. Now, obviously, that's probably an exaggeration, but it's the general idea. Any laptop that can run Chrome should be able to run your games with very low latencies. Now, you're probably thinking, that sounds a little ludicrous. I can't even watch HD movies. There are some allowances for this, and I'll get into that later. But right now, I'm going to defend Google Stadia. Now that you know the concept of it, let me tell you why that might be a good idea or a bad idea. So, the first idea or thought that I want to talk about here is there's this really bad myth going around right now that Google Stadia is a subscription service. So, number one, let me say Google Stadia is free. Now, to clarify, there is something called Stadia Pro, which is a lot like your Xbox Gold membership. By buying that Pro membership, you do get some added benefits. For example, you get some free games per month, and you get the ability to stream in 4K. So if you do want to play your games in 4K, you have to pay a monthly fee for them. But is it really so bad to play in 4K? That's for you to decide. But Google Stadia is free to everyone else. I purchased the Founders Edition, and that cost me $120 US. The reason I did that is because I want to get Stadia early. I'm actually going to be starting it with this November. On the 19th, I think, is when they roll out that. And I'm looking forward to it, but that's why I paid the premium. When it actually goes live in 2020, it'll be free for anyone. You'll just log into Stadia with a Google account, I'd assume, and get your games and then play them on your devices. You can buy a Stadia controller, but again, that's up to you. But it is free. Now, the second thing I want to talk about, streaming quality. Streaming quality will vary. Like I said, you'll need a pro subscription to even play in 4K. Otherwise, you can still play in 1080 on the free subscription, but there is a caveat to that. You do have to have good enough internet to do so. As a matter of fact, at my home back in the States, up until about last week, I only had 3 megabyte internet. And that's not enough for Stadia. So if you live in a rural, out-of-the-way area where you can't get at least 10 megabits of data, or maybe it's megabytes, sorry if I'm getting confusing, either way, if you don't have 10 meg data, then you're probably not going to be able to use Stadia, and it's not the service for you. But otherwise, I'll be honest here, most towns and cities, you can get cable internet for not that super expensive. A lot of them go for around $45 a month, giving you 30 or higher, and it's all you need for Stadia. And now, the question that always follows this part of Stadia is, okay, so I can stream my HD games, but is there really no lag? Yes and no. The latency is reportedly pretty low from the playtests, so you shouldn't have terribly lagging. Remember again, Google has server farms, so they're not paying or renting space or renting out broadband connection. They're using their own. So that gives them a unique ability to have more clear, more easy connections. So hopefully that latency and lag won't be anything crazier than what a console would stutter over some heavier loading places. Of course, that remains to be seen, which is again why there's a beta coming out here in November. So like people like me can play it and say, hey, Stadia is not bad with lag, or watch out people, Stadia is laggy. But HD videos are usually a cinch at 30 megs, and there's no real reason that a video game couldn't be played through there anyway. But we'll just have to see on that. Now, follow-up question when dealing with internet. What about data caps? Okay, data caps are real, and they're a real concern. If you're like me, until I started looking at Stadia, the thought of a data cap never even considered to me. I don't ever come close to hitting my data cap, and as a matter of fact, I didn't even know there was such a thing. And that's because some providers don't even have that. For example, Spectrum Internet doesn't have a data cap for most people. And the people that do have a data cap, it's 1 terabyte. The average American US household uses 190 gigs a month. Of course, it's expected that things are going to continue to rise past that 190 gig a month, especially with things like Netflix, Hulu, Showtime. Streaming services are on the rise, and as more and more 4K televisions come out, that makes a big difference. So 190 gigs is the norm over here on our regular 1080 HD, 2 or 3 devices watching sporadically. Whereas 4K over here, it's like night and day. With 4K streaming Netflix all the time, you can probably pretty easily rack up 900 gigabytes. And people were talking about that. But I've got to ask, do you remember downloading games? My laptop is my primary gaming device, and it's a gaming laptop, to be sure, and I have a terabyte hard drive, but with all the mods and different games I run, Arc is huge, and it takes up a lot of data. And sometimes I uninstall games because I'm not playing them, and I download new games, and I'll cycle them out. So throughout a month, I am using data out of my data cap. And some of those games, like Overwatch, is 14 gigs every time you download a new update or a patch. So eventually that will add up. With Google Stadia, there isn't any of that. What I mean by that is Google Stadia has all of that updated on their servers already. You don't download the patches and you don't download the game. So you're saving hard drive space, but you're also saving that data cap. So, is it worth it? Will you save enough? That depends. Personally, I'm probably not going to use a Stadia Pro subscription too long after my first free 3 months that come from the Founders Edition. And I don't need to play in 4K anyway. I don't have a 4K TV or a 4K monitor, so I'm going to stick to 1080 because of that. But even if I had one, do I need to play in 4K? Maybe. Skyrim's not a game for 4K, and I don't think I'd ever feel the need to force it into 4K, so it's not that big a deal for me to keep playing in 1080. It's perfectly fine, and to be honest, I can't always tell the difference between 1040 and 4K. And I know, 4K, it's really touted as being really great and really amazing, and maybe for you it is. But for me, playing in 1080 and not worrying about that data cap, that's not too bad. So, to give you a comparison for some data cap information, I'm going to talk about video streaming. HD quality video is between 720 and 2K. The app adjusts the stream generally is somewhere in between there, which is where we say 1080, because that's generally right about where HD is. So the HD quality video uses about 0.9 gigabytes for 720 and 1.5 gigabytes for 1080, or 1080, not 1080. No one actually says that. But, so 3 gigs at 2K per hour. So, let's say I'm playing 1080. I have 1 terabyte of data. 1 terabyte of data is 1,000 gigs. I don't know if you knew that or not, but now you do. So, at 1080, using 1.5 gigs an hour, let's say I play 2 hours a day. Well, that's 3 gigabytes a day. 30 times 3, 9 gigs. 90 gigs, not 9 gigs. Sorry, math is not my forte. But anyway, so if I play 2 hours a day at 1080, that's 3 gigs a day. Multiply that by 30, and you have 90 gigs. 90 gigs doesn't seem like a lot, especially if you have a terabyte cap. You've barely used a tenth of that month. And I'll be honest, I don't get in 2 hours of gaming every day. I'm a college student, that's just not part of my life. Which is another point I'd like to make. If you're a college student on campus, or if you hang around your school and they have internet there, campus internet and school internet generally doesn't have a cap. So the target audience, which is gamers, and a large portion of are 18 to 24-year-old guys, in all honesty, well, they have campus Wi-Fi. So that data cap's not even a problem. But again, if you're used to playing at 1080 and you're okay with that, it's not going to be that much. Ultra HD quality uses a lot of data. So like 4K, we're talking 7.2 gigs an hour. Play 2 hours, 14 gigs a day. 14 times 30, well, that's 420 gigs. And that can be a lot of data, and that's before we've even factored in your Netflix addiction. I like to watch Netflix, and it would be kind of a bummer if I couldn't watch it because I played too much Stadia. But again, I was thinking 2 hours a day. Now, let's say you play a little more than that. We'll crunch some more numbers here. Let's say you're really addicted to 4K. So, we're going to take that 7.2. We're going to multiply it by, you know what, let's do 5 hours a day. Let's say you've got some crazy free time. 5 hours a day. 30 days a week. You're going to hit your terabyte. Just on Stadia alone. But let's be real. No one's going to game that much. And if they do, well, maybe consider a different hobby, or that Stadia isn't for you. Or just not playing in 4K. That's not something that you can really gripe about when there are so many ways around that. And I understand that it offers a 4K gaming experience, especially if you're going to pay for the Pro Edition to get that. But I don't know. That's going to be down to you and your data caps. Your choice there. I personally don't see it as a flaw. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the game lineup for Stadia. The more fun part, now that I'm done getting all that technical data, internet, numbers, gigabytes, math. No more of that. No thanks. Miss me on that. Anyway, so that kind of stuff is actually really good. I don't have any negatives to say about the game lineup, and here's why. So the game lineup is pretty good for a console launch. If you've stuck around to see a few console launches here and there, you'll know sometimes they have a lot of games, like 30 to 50, maybe even 60. There's a lot for Google Stadia comparatively. You've got titles like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Borderlands 3, Destiny 2, which actually comes free with the Founder Edition along with the DLC, but Doom Eternal, Dragon Ball Xenoverse, Farming Simulator 19, Mortal Kombat 11, Power Rangers, Battle for the Grid, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Ghost Recon, The Division 2, and Wolfenstein Youngblood. Those are some pretty big deal games I just named, and they are going to be on Stadia at launch. Baldur's Gate is an exclusive to Stadia, I believe, and that's a big game being released by Wizard of the Coast. So anyone that starts telling you that Stadia is just going to be a wash-up, like a certain gaming service I'm not going to mention from way back when, well, it just doesn't look like that's true. The AAA titles are here, and they are coming to Google. Now, whether or not we'll see more of those can only be decided later, but if the trend continues, it's gonna happen. This is something that you should be excited about. No game system will ever launch with every game that's ever been created. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but it's just not gonna happen. Instantaneous access to all those games is not going to be something that we're going to see. Now, of course, if 10 years down the line I'm proven wrong, I will come back and I will completely apologize for saying that, because I was wrong. But for now, Google Stadia has a good repertoire of games, and I can only see it growing. There's no lack of games or this bare, empty shell. It's kind of the same issue I had when people said that Nintendo Switch didn't have any games for it. A lot of them were indie games, right, sure, but they were good indie games, and it had good games that you could play on it. The Switch library is huge now, and I still hear people complain that there aren't enough games on it, which I think is just willful ignorance. The list is there. Google Stadia does have games, and I fully believe it will continue to have games. So, if that's what you're worried about, don't be. Here's my next point. And this one is an opinion-based feel point that there's no reasoning through. The extinction of hardware gaming. Okay, this one is kind of true. And I get where you're coming from if you feel this way, because initially I was against Stadia for this very reason. I like buying cartridge games. As a matter of fact, if you look behind me, those are my hard copies of Switch games that I have here in the UK with me, and I have even more back home. I prefer to buy the hard copy of games. It's not like there's anything wrong with buying digital copies. I have a lot of PC games, like 80 or so, and of course they're all digital copies. If Steam goes under, then my games are all gone, and, well, that's just life. Same thing for Google Stadia. Inevitably, the servers will shut down. It may be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. No one knows, but eventually these Stadia servers will shut down and it'll cease to be a functioning system. That's just the nature of the beast. Eventually it'll come to pass. But I'm not trying to blow the panic horns here, okay? That's a long way down the road, and if I'm going to be honest, it's pretty hard to get retro consoles that are in really good shape. You can do it, but what are the actual chances that you'll play it a lot? I'm not saying that you won't, but statistically speaking, it's not going to happen. You know, a lot of games you only play once. There are some RPGs that I can think of that I've only played once, and as much as I enjoyed playing through them, and I enjoy seeing that I still have the cartridge for my collection or whatever, Well, that's just the point. It's for my collection. I don't actually get it out and play it. I like to own these older games, but I don't actually play a lot of them, even though they still sit in my collection. Some of my DS games I haven't touched since I was, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14, which has been a long time for me. And I don't want to say that there's this sort of resistance solely based on that fact, but I feel like it's definitely there. Even now, hearing about systems being released without a disc drive or a cartridge case, I don't like that. When I heard that the Xbox One didn't have a disc drive in it, I don't even remember. I stopped listening about that one. I know it's not the One S, it was like something else, but irregardless of that, I wouldn't buy a console if it didn't have some way to take these cartridges or discs or whatever. I like having hard copies of games. And yet I'm ordering Stadia. I know, it's conflicting, but if I get games on Stadia, the ease of access for me is pretty incredible. I mean, my Nintendo Switch is pretty versatile in how I can use it, but Stadia even more so. And it's a really cool concept, and it gives me access to those games that Nintendo won't have. Probably like, well, for example, Baldur's Gate, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Those aren't on the Switch. But it would be nice to play them, and Stadia is much cheaper than me going out and getting an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4 or 5 when that comes out, or Project Scarlet when it comes out. So I'm hopeful for Stadia. And I guess this is another sub-point that kind of goes along with my fifth point there. Yes, this does mean no resale value. The biggest problem with digital games is you can buy them once, and then you can't, like, sell it to a GameStop for in-store credit. Don't ever do that. GameStop rips you off. Anyway, but yeah, no, I get that. I love going to, you know, these markets or your local game dealer or whatever it is, wherever you get your games from. That's amazing, and it's great to get cool deals on cool games. I was just at Comic-Con this past week and seeing all the lines of 64 games and Game Boy Color games. I actually picked up a copy of Emerald and Leaf for a friend, Pokemon Emerald, Pokemon Leaf Green, and I got Pokemon Emerald for my girlfriend to try out since she hadn't played the game before. But you can't do that with Stadia because, of course, it's digital games. You buy them and then they're there. Alternatively, you buy them and they're there. Like, that's a good thing. You can't lose them. You can lose a cartridge. I almost lost my Link's Awakening cartridge just a couple days ago, and as embarrassing as that is, it happens when you have physical cartridges. They can also be damaged, destroyed, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, a server can be destroyed, but it's much less likely to happen, and even if it does, I'm sure they have backups and backups of games, and you can always say, hey, you know that thing that happened where you lost a bunch of servers? Can I get my games back? And I'm sure it'll get fixed. So, that one is purely up to you to decide how you feel about it. I'm of two minds. Will I buy a lot of games on Stadia? Maybe. I bought a lot of games on Steam, and I initially wasn't sold on that idea either, but here I am 4 or 5 years later buying a lot of games on Steam. So, I don't know. You gotta come to that realization yourself of where you stand on that and whether or not that's a real obstacle for you. Don't let it stand in your way, but of course, don't think that this means the end of cartridge and disc gaming. It probably doesn't. There are too many people who enjoy the collecting value of that. It's just not logical right now for the entire gaming industry to make that leap into cloud gaming, no matter how much people might want to push it now. So, by now, I feel that I've given Stadia a pretty fair defense. And I just kind of want to sum those up real quick and reiterate them so that they're fresh in your mind. Google Stadia is a free service in 2020. Buying Founders Edition right now does give you early access, and it'll give you Pro for 3 months, Destiny 2 for free, you get a Chromecast Ultra and a controller. But when it launches in 2020, it actually is free. Data speed capping is a worry and also not a worry. I think I misspoke earlier when talking about this actually, so I do want to apologize for that. The actual breakdown is that to play at 720p, you need 10 megapixel internet, or megabyte. Again, I keep missaying that, and now I've confused myself. Anyway, you need 10 meg internet to play at 720, 20 meg internet to play at 1080, and 35 meg to play at the best 4K. So, yes, that can be a problem if you live in a rural area, or if, like I did, you only have like 3 meg internet. That's horrible and that sucks, and I'm sorry, but Stadia is just not going to be for you. However, like I said, a lot of places you can get that 20 and up meg internet. So, is that a problem? Kinda, maybe, yes, no. Your location will depend and affect your use of Stadia. Data capping. Yes, again, it can be a problem if you play several hours of 4K videos and gaming a day. But if you're going to play 1080, 2 hours a day, you're only going to use 1/10 of your terabyte cap if you even have a cap. So maybe switch to a provider that doesn't have a cap if that's going to be your problem. But is it an obstacle to Stadia? Not really. The fourth issue, Google Stadia does have enough games. Personally, I feel that way, and I think it's a very good indicator that more games will be coming to Google Stadia. It does have a strong lineup of AAA and good titles, and of course good is relative, but it does have these bigger studios that seem to have bought into the idea of Google Stadia, which means we can probably expect to continue to see more games released on Google Stadia. So if you're worried about games, pretty sure that's a non sequitur here. And that last issue I talked about here, physical versus cloud gaming, that one is personal. If you'd rather have your physical games, then Stadia just is not for you. But if you don't mind having the convenience and cloud-based games, then yeah, Stadia is for you. And there's nothing to say that you can't continue to mix it. Maybe you are supporting the trend towards cloud gaming. But is it convenient enough and worth it enough for you to switch to it? That's going to have to be a you call. But I, for one, think it probably is. I'll keep my cartridge games, but I'll also enjoy the convenience of cloud gaming. That's a win-win for me as a consumer. Okay, that's all I've got for today. I hope I gave you some stuff to think about, and hopefully I've helped giving you some clarity on Google Stadia and what it is. It's a cloud-based gaming service that wants to make it easy to access games for everyone with an internet connection that can support it, which is more people than it isn't. So maybe give it a try when it goes free. I don't want to ever say, push you into this big purchase, especially on something that's a beta test like that. But I'm going to get it, and you can watch me give it a try here in a few months and make your decisions off of that if you want. But I would highly recommend at least giving Stadia the benefit of the doubt for now. We could be looking at something really great here, and it'd be bad if we shut it down just because we're scared or because of the misconceptions going on about it. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video today. Thank you so much for watching. I do want to remind you, I'm doing a giveaway. So if you want to win Pokemon Sword or Pokemon Shield, I'm giving away a copy of each. So if you want to enter that, subscribe to my channel. Obviously, that's what every YouTuber says. But also follow me on Instagram at Motley Broadcast and on Twitter at Motley Broadcast. I post things on there. Usually updates about my videos or cool fantasy stuff that I'm doing. But it's worth checking it out. Maybe you'll see some cool stuff on there and you'll be like, that's cool. Or maybe you'll just win a giveaway when I do giveaways. I'd like to do a lot of those. And depending on how successful this one is and how much my fan base grows, I'll do more because I like giving stuff to people, Just one of those things. But yeah, like, subscribe, follow me on social media. I've got a Ko-Fi if you want to support the channel there. No biggie there. And most importantly, though, I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. We're getting into the holiday season pretty soon, and it's a time for, getting on winter break, enjoying yourself, and hitting up some of those video games you haven't had in a while. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next video.